Forget Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat. I don't know if Tom Seaver and Doc Gooden in their primes could fix this Mets rotation right now.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. For to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, I really don't even know where to go with today's podcast because the devastation of this pitching staff has reached a new low. It is just unbelievable how bad the Mets rotation has gotten, because if there was one thing that you could count on over the last couple of months, it's that David Peterson was the stopper. He was the guy that was going to give you not a quality start, at least one good enough where he was going to get deep into the game. He wasn't going to blow up. He's the guy. And so when you're sitting there in the top of the fourth inning with the 6-0 lead and David Peterson's on the mound, you expect to win that game. No doubt about it. I was just wondering, okay, how many innings is he going to go? Is he going to be able to get through the sixth? And guess what? He didn't make it out of the fourth. I mean, it is unfathomable what is happening with the Mets rotation right now. It's brutal. And you completely ruined what was an awesome start to the game. You're riding the momentum of the Pete Alonso love fest. Bottom of the first inning, Pete Alonso comes up with the bases juiced, nobody out. Lindor leadoff double, walks to Soto and Nimmo. Carlos Carrasco looks every bit his age. He's clearly not a big league starting pitcher anymore. Throwing a bunch of pitches over the heart of the plate. And Pete gets an RBI single to drive in two. Jeff McNeil strikes out. Starlin Marte walks to load the bases again. Cedric Mullins hits a fading line drive that gets caught in a shoestring catch. Ends up being a sacrifice fly. And then Alvarez strikes out. So you score 3 runs. In retrospect, they should have scored more because they needed more. But then the next inning, you had Francisco Lindor a 1-out hit. Then you had Juan Soto hit a 2-run homer. Doubles by Nimmo and McNeil. And all of a sudden, you got that 6-0 lead. But David Peterson had a meltdown of epic proportions in the fourth inning. He just completely lost the strike zone. And he walked with 4 batters in an inning, gave up a single, then issued 3 walks, including walking in a run. And that was the worst one because it was Nick Allen at the plate. You cannot walk Nick Allen with the bases loaded. And what's amazing is he stayed in the game after that. I mean, he clearly didn't have it, but it's David Peterson, so keep him out there. Jurickson Profar cleared the bases with a double. Peterson issues 1 more walk before Reed Garrett comes in. Reed Garrett's supposed to stop the bleeding. He does not do that. Gives up a single that scores another run. Now the Mets are clinging to a 1-run lead. He gets a strikeout, gives up another walk to load the bases again, and then Michael Harris hits a grand slam. And all of a sudden, you went from a 6-0 lead to a 9-6 deficit in 1/2 inning. Just brutal. It's remarkable how bad this rotation has been. Look at the last turn through this rotation because Kodai Senga is about to pitch. So Kodai Senga went 4 1/3, allowed 3 runs. Only one of them earned. Actually was, based on the scale that we can grade this rotation on, the best start of this past turn because a couple of those runs were unearned. Is that the game? I'm guessing that was the game where Lindor made the error. I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. Frankie Montas, he had an opener in front of him, but he gave the Mets 3 innings and allowed 3 runs before getting pulled. Sean Manaea goes 4 innings, allows 4 runs. Doesn't look that bad in retrospect, but obviously not a good start. Clay Holmes, 3 2/3, allows 5 runs. And now tonight, David Peterson, 3 1/3, 6 runs, walked 5. I can't even imagine what the ERA of that group is. I mean, that's what? 7 1/3 innings pitched, 11 1/3, 12, 15. So we got 18 and a third innings pitched. I'm going to do the ERA calculation right now because I think it'll be worth it. I think it'll be worth it. Oh my gosh. How many runs? So 1 run, 1 earned run from Senga, 3 for Montas. That's 4, 8, 13, and then 19 earned runs. So if my calculations were correct, and I'm just confirming real quick. No, hold on. We need to add one more out to this ERA. All right, so you add it all up, a 9.33 ERA. A 9.33 ERA. You going to win games like that? It's great that we learned today that Nolan McLean's going to make his MLB debut on Saturday. Well deserved. But can he save this team alone? No, a lot has to happen. This is a team that's now blown 4-run leads in 3 consecutive games. Luckily, they're able to score enough runs to make the middle game of that stretch not matter because they were able to score the 13 runs and win on Tuesday. And we thought, oh, everything's fixed. Well, not fixed by any stretch of the imagination. The one thing that you could say about the pitching in this game is Paul Blackburn did a nice job saving the bullpen. Finished off the game, went 5 innings on 61 pitches, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. And the funny thing is, the way the media was talking about Blackburn, like I saw Anthony DeComa read an article about how Blackburn has got limited time to try to prove himself. Gary Cohen was talking about Blackburn as if he was going to be gone after this outing because they have to call somebody up or have to let somebody go to call up McLean. Why in the world are they going to get rid of Paul Blackburn? That's what I want to talk about next. How they integrate McLean and Sproat, which I know we've touched on, but now that Blackburn's in this bullpen, I want to give it another look. And also just where can they create more roster flexibility? Because there's a guy that I never would have expected to want to advocate to go to Syracuse that I think needs to be sent down. So we're going to go through all that stuff here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I was using Monarch, I was shocked at how much money I was wasting each month on subscriptions that I wasn't even using. You also start to realize that takeout, it's a quiet killer to your finances. Those constant expenses start to add up. Take control of your finances. With Monarch Money, use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. So first and foremost, let's talk about Paul Blackburn because he looked pretty solid in this outing. He did have a hanging break ball to Marcell Ozuna in the second inning of work that resulted in a 2-run homer. He walked Matt Olson before Ozuna to set up the 2-run homer. But other than that, he was good. His first inning of work got 3 lineouts. The first 2 were well struck. Nice catch by Beatty and 1 by Alonso, and then a soft liner to Jeff McNeil, but a 1-2-3 inning nonetheless. After giving up the 2-run homer, he was able to settle in from there, and he retired the next 12 batters in a row to end his day with 5 innings pitched, giving up those 2 runs, and that was it. Not bad at all. You saw him just attack the zone with his 2-seam in particular and was getting a lot of ugly swings and weak contact, balls hit on the ground. It was a very effective performance from Blackburn, and obviously you have to understand the full context because you could look and say, well, based on the last 2 games, Justin Hageman and Paul Blackburn should be in the rotation, and other guys should not because they have pitched better in those 2 games in bulk relief than anything we've seen from the starting pitchers. But you also have to remember that the Braves are going to be able to get up a little bit more for David Peterson early in a game that they're trailing than when they have a huge lead and it is Paul Blackburn or the same thing with Justin Hageman. where they're at that point defeated after the Mets scored a bunch of runs and Hageman's able to cruise. It's not to take everything away from those two guys. Hageman and Garrett both did a great job to save the bullpen, where now, as we'll eventually talk in the final segment about the final game of this series, the Mets are well positioned when it comes to their bullpen to potentially win that game. I'd say regardless of what they get from their starting pitcher, but Kodai Senga really has to snap this streak because, again, it's just been brutal. But from what I saw in this game, I don't know how you can look at the last string of starts from Clay Holmes, how Frankie Montas has pitched, how now all of a sudden David Peterson has a bad start, how Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga have not been able to establish themselves coming off the IL and look like themselves. How you can look at all of that and say, yeah, well, Paul Blackburn is stretched out to, a full workload. He can go 100 pitches. He was in Syracuse and pitching to an ERA in the low twos. And we just saw him pitch 5 innings and only need 61 pitches to get those 15 outs. But yeah, we're going to cut Paul Blackburn because what else can we do? Well, you can do a lot because there's a couple of relievers who have not been very good for the Mets for a while now. And I was surprised actually at how bad the numbers were on these two guys. If you go back to June 1st, Ryne Stanek and Reed Garrett have both been awful. Awful. Stanek I knew. Garrett I did not realize he's been this bad. For Stanek, 7.17 ERA in 24 appearances and 21 1/3 innings pitched. A 7.17 ERA over a 2.5-month span. Reed Garrett, a 5.7 ERA in 25 appearances. It went up a run tonight because he gave up 3 of his own at least. But still, a 5.7 ERA. And the beautiful thing about Garrett, he still has an option. So you want to preserve guys, you want to hold on to everybody, keep your depth. Maybe Reed Garrett needs to go down for Brandon Waddell if the Mets are looking for a long man on Thursday. Now, granted, Frankie Montas was supposed to be available out of the bullpen. You hope Kodai Senga is good to go, and maybe that's enough length, and you don't need to do anything right now. And maybe you just keep this team as is and don't make a roster move before the game on Thursday. But when you have to bring up Nolan McLean for that start on Saturday, and you're trying to think of what to do, who do you DFA, what's your options? I think the option should be pretty simple at this point. You send Reed Garrett to Syracuse, and you hope that he can get himself on track. Maybe you slow down his workload, let him get a little bit of a rest, ramp him back up, and hopefully in September, he looks like the Reed Garrett that we saw early this season that did not give up a run the first month that he pitched and then gave up barely anything in the next month that he pitched and was pitching to an ERA in the low ones in the beginning of June. But that has completely gone away. It's been a brutal stretch. And with that option, I don't know how you don't exercise it and just send him down and keep all these starters because you know what? Worst case scenario, at least you have guys that can get you through these games. With Montas potentially, Montas in the bullpen now, Blackburn's in the bullpen, and you could have Clay Holmes in the bullpen. Maybe that's what you do. Maybe you go with a 5-man rotation where it's Senga, Manaea, Peterson, Sproat, and McLean. That's your 5-man rotation, and you just keep the other 3 guys in your bullpen, and maybe they help you out in that regard, and they figure things out in those roles, and that's how you go about it. But I just can't see how you would watch that outing by Paul Blackburn and say, yeah, we really need to hang on to Reed Garrett right now. We can't consider optioning him. We certainly can't consider cutting Ryne Stanek in his 7.17 ERA over the past 2.5 months. We got to hold on to him. I know the Mets have to be aggressive. They have to shake things up. And those are 2 relievers that you can remove from this equation. And it's going to be an unconventional pitching staff where it's 5 high leverage arms. It's 3 starting pitchers that are serving bullpen roles and maybe a 5-man rotation that includes 2 prospects. But it can't get worse than what the Mets are putting out there. So it's great that we learned that Nolan McLean is going to make that start on Saturday. That's awesome. You got to bring up Sproat too, in my opinion. If you were that in between of the decision and you feel this good about McLean coming up, because it certainly seems like the Mets do, then just go all in on it. Go all in on the stuff that these guys have, the youthful exuberance of coming up and making your MLB debut and pitching in the big leagues. And maybe they actually turn it on and it trickles to the rest of this rotation. That's what you have to hope for. But I don't know at this point what you are expecting that's going to be different if you send Clay Holmes out there on Sunday to make that start. Do you really think he's going to figure it out? He has shown you at this point that he needs to be shut down either for the season, and that's another way you can create a roster spot, or because he's healthy and he has all the experience pitching out of the bullpen, you shorten him up and you have him in a bullpen role. It's that simple. Just like you're doing with Frankie Montas. And right now, Paul Blackburn's the long man. If you need a 6-man rotation with this stretch coming up of 16 games in 16 days, if you need that, then by all means, throw Garrett out there. I don't think it's going to be worse than what you've seen. How could it be? It's been horrible, the pitching the Mets have gotten. So I just think that this is not a time to be clutching your pearls over the idea of losing a talent like Ryne Stanek or hurting feelings on Reed Garrett, who has been a very critical part of this bullpen for the last 2 years. It's fine. He has the option sitting there. Use it. And you know what? I'm sure he'd be back in September, and maybe he's back a much better pitcher. But Reed Garrett has not helped you over the past 2.5 months. I did not realize his ERA was close to 6 in that span, and that says all it needs to. I mean, he's just not on that same level as the rest of your high leverage arms. And Stanek certainly is not either. So I get rid of those guys, call up the top prospects, and roll from there and just figure it out. It might be a series by series equation. There might be a time where you say, we're going to open up a game with Clay Holmes. We're going to go to Paul Blackburn for bulk in the middle, and we're going to finish it off with Frankie Montas. You might do that. You might have all those guys pitch 3 innings in a collective game and just try to get by. But to me, at this point, something has to give. And maybe what gives is the guys that are supposed to be getting the job done get the job done. And we'll see if Kodai Senga can do what he's supposed to as the ace of this team. He's supposed to be the stopper. And so maybe Kodai Senga with another packed crowd at Citi Field ready to celebrate Pete Alonso one last time with the pregame ceremony. Maybe Kodai Senga is going to go out there and he's going to shove and he's going to get the Mets through 6 innings, and he'll be the one that ends these struggles. But to have a 6-0 lead turn into a 9-6 deficit, and it was due to your best starting pitcher in this rotation, the guy that's been the most consistent, it's a new low that's hard to come back from. And yes, the Mets still have time. They still theoretically could get back in this division race. They have 7 more games against the Phillies, and it's the Reds that are running you down right now in the wild card. And the Reds, while they have been playing good baseball as of late, this is a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2013. So you would think that the Mets are still in a good spot to make the playoffs, but the way they are playing right now, it's hard to be very confident in what this team can do moving forward. It just is. But I'm going to preview the game 3 of this series with Kodai Senga going up against Bryce Elder. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Also, an update on Tylor Megill, who did begin his rehab assignment this week. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. And get a lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. You go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. First off, let's talk about Tylor Megill. He pitched in Double-A on, Tuesday. Went 1 2/3, allowed 3 hits, walked 1, and struck out 4. Got up to 41 pitches. So with that pitch count, you imagine maybe 4 more rehab starts to get him fully stretched out and ready to help this rotation. So if you do the math and have him pitch on regular rest as much as he can in the minor leagues, he would go again on Sunday this week. He would go on Friday next week. Then it would be Wednesday after that. And then his final rehab start could come on September 2nd. So it would be, again, a start on Sunday. He'd pitch on August 22nd, August 27th, and then September 2nd. And then at that point, he should be good to return to the rotation, and your rosters expand. So you very well could have Tylor Megill be that September call-up. He might be the guy that maybe he doesn't even need 4 more rehab starts. Maybe only needs 3, and maybe he can pitch on September 2nd on the big league roster. Who knows? But it's going to be good to get him back because, I mean, this team's grasping for straws at this point when it comes to the rotation. And so at the timeline that I just laid out, you would have the ability to probably see McLean and Sproat make 3 starts apiece. This is assuming what probably can't be assumed, that Sproat is also going to make his debut this week. Right now, they've only announced the one, and that's McLean. So we'll see what the ultimate decision is on Sproat, but you would be in line to have seen maybe 3 turns in the rotation for McLean, maybe a couple turns from Blackburn. If you do decide to go to a 6-man rotation, you see how Montas and Holmes are pitching out of that bullpen. You see if any injuries pop up, and that clears the way at all. But then when Megill would be ready, theoretically, he could be a real answer for this Mets team in that rotation. He was definitely having a good season prior to going down. He's been out for a while now, but maybe his return can help stabilize things. It's just brutal to consider where this team's at. And I know that a lot of people are critical right now of the Mets front office. They did a horrible job building a rotation in the offseason, did a bad job at the deadline. I get the frustration, but this is not on the front office. This is on the pitchers. And yes, it has not gone to plan for the Mets, but they went into spring training with 8 viable arms. And of those 8 viable starting pitchers, only 2 of them have remained upright all year. David Peterson and Clay Holmes, who is well past what anybody could have reasonably expect his innings to end up at as he makes that jump from reliever to starter. So with that being the preface to where you're at right now with this rotation and what has happened and how we got here, it's just been bad luck with the injury bug, particularly for this rotation. And it has put them in some really tough spots. And so now, while they have gotten healthy, they have guys that are still just not completely in sync and rhythm yet. And if that doesn't happen soon, you're going to be in a world of hurt at the end of September, because this team might not go anywhere. And considering what they've invested in this team, both in the offseason with the signings that they made, and at the deadline with the prospects they traded, to come up empty and not even make the playoffs this year would be a really, really rough outcome, and one that now feels almost realistic because of how bad it's looked. But we saw on Tuesday that you're only 1 game away for things looking a lot better. And so we'll see if the Mets can find their way to that. But definitely, a point right now where they have to just find some answers. And whether that's the kids, whether that's someone else stepping up, something has to give for this rotation to be able to compete this year. And maybe it's Senga tonight against Bryce Elder. Elder has an ERA over 6 on the season, so a guy the Mets should absolutely be able to hit. The Braves bullpen just covered 7 innings of a game on Wednesday, so maybe they're a little bit tired. Hopefully the Mets lineup can continue to hit. And if you can get Kodai Senga through 6 innings, maybe all is right with the world. Your bullpen's pretty rested. Diaz, Helsley, Rogers, Raley, all 4 of them had 3 days off. So you should be good to go if the game's close. And if it's not close, we'll see if they bring up a long man to be able to get through some innings there in the middle if Senga ends up getting pulled early. But the goal here, the hope here, is that Senga will be the guy that stops this bleeding for this rotation, and maybe everybody can fall into line and follow his lead after that. You got Sean Manaea likely going on Friday. Maybe these 2 guys starting in this turn become the frontline arms the Mets need them to be to carry them to the playoffs. Because if you're getting back of the rotation production from those guys, it's going to be a rough couple of months trying to just find your way to the postseason when you're clearly just not playing good baseball. And almost at this point, you can fairly describe them as just a bad baseball team. That's what they have been over the last few months. I think there's too much talent for this to continue. I think these guys will eventually snap out of it, but it's hard to have much confidence after a game like the one we watched tonight. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find a link in the episode description. We're going to subtext.com/LockedOnMets.